Well, it's quite a bit of talk tonight so far about the threat of China, communist China, the military threat, the threat against freedoms and liberties of the people of China, and certainly the economic threat and military threat that we might get from their tech sector here in America with their devices. But what about the cultural threat? What about cultural Marxism? You've heard of that, but do you know what it is? Do you know where to find it? Do you know that it might be on your kid's college campus as we speak? Do you know that it's something that we need to engage in right now because it's in our backyard? And it really is deteriorating our nation. Joining us right now to discuss that is a senior fellow for Foreign Policy Center at Heritage and the co-author of a brand new paper along with Catherine Gorka. That name sounds familiar. The paper's title, How Cultural Marxism Threatens the United States and How Americans Can Fight It. It's Mike Gonzalez. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Larry, how are you? I'm very happy that you were discussing China because we're facing two Marxist threats. One, it's an adversary that's a foreign power. The other one is an internal, domestic, American-grown Marxist adversary.
Yeah, and it's two sides of the same coin, really, because this is this creeping Marxism that maybe was creeping at one time in our halls of academia and maybe in our pop culture and our entertainment field. But boy, it is pretty robust right now, and it's well detailed in your paper.
Yeah, what they tried to do is they abandoned economic Marxism, they abandoned economic determinism, and they abandoned having a bloody revolution in which the proletariat kills the bourgeois and rapes his wife and daughter. Instead, they have a quiet revolution, and what they try to do by infiltrating the institutions in having a quiet rolling revolution is really cultural genocide of the West, particularly of the United States.
So, you know, I was there watching the Berlin Wall come down and watching the fall of the Soviet Union in Eastern Europe, and I remember some smart guys here in Washington, D.C. said it was the end of history, Mike, and clearly they were wrong about that. But I do remember feeling like, okay, we're past this 20th century battle that we were waged in. It's over. So talk to me about cultural Marxism and how, in a way, it appears, at least in this country right now, the Marxists are winning.
Yeah, they are winning. And it's funny you say that because in 1989, the New York Times, of all things, wrote an article by the former Moscow bureau chief saying, look, communism is losing behind the Iron Curtain, but it's winning in U.S. colleges. And what happened is that the left that we had in the 60s, the radical students, the new left, at first tried terrorism, like the Weather on the Ground, the Symbionese Liberation Army, the Black Panthers. That was very unsuccessful. They did not succeed at overthrowing the American system through violence. So sometime in the 1970s, they desisted from that, and they realized, in the words of Rudy Duchka, that you needed to have a long march through the institutions. That phrase itself betrays its Marxism because that's a reference to Mao's long march in China. And what the long march through the institutions was, let's take over the institutions that make meaning. So it was about owning the means of production of meaning, if you will. The media, the academy, all the things that explain life to people. And that way you can indoctrinate, you infiltrate these institutions, take them over, and you can indoctrinate people into hating the United States and wanting to dismantle the United States, the American system, and changing it radically.
And I think a lot of people, they sort of shorthand communism, socialism, Marxism as sort of synonymous, and they think it all has to do with this economic system, which I guess would be the socialist component of this. But the Marxism goes well beyond just the dollars and cents and control of means of production and who gets to decide where money is spent and who gets money and how much money you get for a certain job instead of the free market deciding. Could you explore this a little bit? I'll give you an example if I could. The idea that our medical industry right now, where you see doctors and medical organizations advancing political and cultural agendas having to do with gender, for instance, and saying that men can be pregnant and such. That's not science, that's not medicine, but is that an example of cultural Marxism infiltrating a realm of science that should just be fact-based?
Completely. And if you hear them talk about it, in the words of David Horowitz, the issue is never the issue is the revolution. So Eric Mann, for example, who indoctrinated Black Lives Matter founder Patrisse Cullors for 10 years, he calls this a little division of labor. He said in an interview with the Venezuela TV station about 7 years ago, whether it's race, whether it's sex, whether it's climate, that's just a little division of labor that we have to overthrow the American system. What happened in a nutshell is that the American worker, like the European worker, was a very bad revolutionary. The American industrial worker of Northern Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, had zero interest in overthrowing the American system. He just wanted to have a better labor condition. So in the 60s, they started looking for what they called the substitute proletariat, and they happened upon two agents, basically, the intellectuals and the students on the one hand, and the minorities, what Herbert Marcuse, who was the guru of the New Left, called, in his words, the ghetto population. He said the revolution was going to come from people of other races and other colors, again, his words. And these two groups vied for power until the 80s, when it became clear the minorities would be the new revolutionary agents. But today the Democratic Party is made up of the coastal intellectuals, the elites, and they tried to get the minority leaders. So the minorities are now walking away. They want no part of the revolution.
And much like Mao's Cultural Revolution, I think, Mike Gonzalez, and again, I'm only informed because I read smart minds like you and Catherine Gorka who write these papers. But when a child comes home from college and explains to their parents that, your position on transgender issues, or your position on supporting the law enforcement against the Black Lives Matter defund the police position, your position, mom and dad, is harming me personally and harming my friends. Your political position is violence against me and my friends. That actually can influence someone my age to say, oh my gosh, well, I don't want to hurt my daughter. I don't want to hurt my son and their friends. So I'll now adopt this other political position. That's how insidious this becomes. We're seeing this in families across the country. Probably this Thanksgiving, we saw that very conversation occur.
Yeah, I'm sure that it happened in nearly every American home in which a child from college returned for the Thanksgiving holiday. What that is a very not even disguised attempt at censorship. When they say what you say is hurting me, when you say words are violence, speech is violence, what it means is we can regulate speech and we can have what Marcuse called repressive tolerance.
Yeah.
Only the views of the left are allowed. It's just an instrument of social control. Americans should see it for what it is.
Right. And instead of the parents, calling the authorities in Mao's China on their parents to get them arrested and reprogrammed, they're just influencing them and emotionally manipulating them at the behest of their college professors and social media pressure. So let's get to the second part of your headline here: how Americans can fight it. How can we fight this?
Well, I think that we had in our paper very good examples from across the country. Obviously, in the last 2 years, we've had to look at the states for leadership on this, and by the way, state leaders that have taken this issue at hand, like Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, were amply rewarded by the electorate. Let's not forget that DeSantis won with 20% votes, and because he took these issues seriously, he had laws on for example, the kids could not be sexualized under the grade of third grade. I think that was a very generous law.
Yeah.
Kids should not be sexualized in fourth grade, fifth grade, or sixth grade either. But he capped it at third grade. He had a law on universities, state universities. They had to have viewpoint diversity. He went after Disney. Glenn Youngkin was elected on these issues as well.
Yeah.
You have to look at, and by the way, the treasurer of West Virginia is going after companies that boycott, for example, fossil fuels, putting them on a list that these companies can no longer, like BlackRock, can no longer do business with their state. That kind of approach, that policy-based approach, is what you need.
Yeah, there's a reason why the left calls this culture war, and it is a culture war. We didn't start it, but we can't just sit back and let it happen. We need to engage in that war and fight back. Mike Gonzalez, it's a much longer conversation. Maybe we'll have you and Catherine Gorka in studio to delve deeper into it. In the meantime, thank you. More to come on O'Connor Tonight.